It is.
It is indeed.
What if the monsters in horror weren't villains, but reflections of us? From the haunted mind of the Babadook to the grief-soaked rituals of midsummer, horror has always wrestled with our sanity, our fears, and our healing. In this episode of Sako and the Moon, we're diving into how horror explores mental health and how it can even become a form of therapy. Because sometimes facing the darkness on screen helps us face the one inside.
It's true. Set the theme song. Set the theme song. This song here is our theme song. And we're done.
If you're new to the channel, I'm Sako Toomey, artist and author and a bunch of other things, but we'll just mention that I'm self-published 3 times over. And also with a couple of anthologies and stuff like that. And we'll just, let's see, I've been working on my craft for decades, and now I'd like to share my skills with you guys.
And I am Dwan L. Hearn, more affectionately known as the Moon. I write stuff, I film stuff, I talk to people, and I annoy Sako. It's one of my favorite parts of this show.
One of mine too.
It's like the playful kind of annoy, you know. It's the kind that's just like, I'm gonna hit record and he's gonna say something odd. It's gonna throw me off. Which is why it's good, because she has notes. So as long as she's got notes, she's got notes so she doesn't completely lose track, which is why I'm comfortable like throwing her way off base. It's good for my mental health, which is the subject of today's show. My mental health. I'm insane. But no, seriously, it's a very important topic that we really should be discussing more in general. The impacts of not just how certain medias can impact mental health, but how mental health is also reflected in our media. And of course, us being horror authors, how mental health is represented in horror. As we both know, the person is always the crazy one, is always the villain. And I think that sends a bad message if you've never actually encountered certain diagnosis in people, or people with a certain diagnosis. It gives you a terrible impression of what that truly looks like in real life. I'm organized. My organized is just an empty basket. That's me organized. It's an empty basket.
Welcome to Sako and the Moon, the show that explores the dark corners of storytelling and the human mind. In this episode, we're diving into how horror handles mental health, where fear meets psychology, and why those stories hit so hard.
See, it's like I said, but better.
From the grief and isolation of the Babadook to the unraveling faith in Saint Maud, we'll talk about when horror stigmatizes, when it heals, and how it can even become a form of therapy. So turn down the lights, settle in, and join us as we face the monsters within and discover why horror doesn't just scare us, it helps us survive.
What she said.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Quite often, as a matter of fact.
Why do stories of madness, fear, and the supernatural feel so personal and even healing to us? So we're going to talk about the roots in madness and horror. We're going to talk about the problematic tropes. We're going to talk about horror as therapy and modern horror and mental health metaphors. Not necessarily in that order.
Right. Quick shout out to our good old buddy S.A. Bradley, who wrote a book kind of talking about just this, Screaming for Pleasure. He's been on the show, so when you get a chance, go back and find the the episode with S.A. Bradley. I don't know if you wrote him as S.A. Bradley or Scott, but he has a great book that covers this exact topic of sorts. Great guy. Check him out if you get a chance to. He's got a Hellbent for Horror. That's the name of his podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unplanned shout out. He didn't know we were doing that, but it's cool. I mean, it fits the topic, so you can go ahead and check him out. Actually, he did an interview with our other good friend, Dr. AC, on a recent episode.
He did.
So if you want to support the people who support us after you've liked and subscribed to our channel, because you're here, so you're going to do that, right? Right. So after you subscribe to our channel, you can go hit up Hellbent for Horror, and you can go find Horror 101 with Dr. AC, because last I checked, in about a week, he's going to have a couple familiar guests on his episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's us. We're going to be
with the Trilogy of Terror.
It's going to be a
where
great
we get
episode.
to talk ad nauseum about the Trilogy of Terror.
Fantastic.
1979.
Something like that. No, maybe a little earlier. No, 1970 something. It might be 79.
Yeah.
It was a great episode where we got into discussing I bring this all up. There's a reason for this, I promise. You get to check us out next week after you've watched our show next week. So like after you do the obvious things. You'll get to see us again on Horror 101. And if you go check the show out after this, you get to see our buddy Scott. All of that to say, Scott wrote a book on mental health in horror. And some of the things in the episode of a Trilogy of Horror have to do with how horror has been represented how mental health has been represented in horror. And of course, that's the topic of the day. So let's see how it all like trifoils back together. It's like a figure eight with 3 points. It's fine.
It's fine. Gothic literature and early cinema, kind of like, especially Lovecraftian horror, definitely dove into mental health and kind of the mind unraveling.
Yeah.
And that's what we're following, and their perceptions of reality and the hallucinations that they're seeing and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's when we did the Lovecraft, because I really wasn't a Lovecraft person until we did our episode, another episode for you to go back and watch. The whole of Cthulhu was just this guy going mad, ultimately, And as we discuss mental health is sort of a broad topic in general. It's like the general health of the mind as opposed to the body. Not to be confused with like brain health, but like mental health of the mind, how we're thinking and feeling, how we're perceiving the world. And as it goes into Call of Cthulhu, as you were mentioning with Gothic and Lovecraftian horror, we're watching the mind basically break. Because, everything we see, touch, feel, taste, hear, is just how the brain is interpreting the signals it's receiving. And anything can screw up the perception of those signals. And, mostly it's things like trauma, or what we define as trauma. And that can skew the perception of the world around us. And Call of Cthulhu was that in its own self. It was just the perception, the one guy's perception of the world being completely fucked, for lack of a better way of putting it. His perception of the world around him was absolutely dog water, and crazy.
So BPD has been stigmatized for years in horror. In a lot of shows and movies, BPD is a sign of a serial killer. Completely unfair. Also, hi, Aisling.
Hello. BPD is borderline personality disorder. I think it's sometimes also either renamed or diagnosed as complex PTSD. They're very, very close, but some people are going from one diagnosis to the other. It's more common than you think. If you've seen the movie Girl Interrupted, I suggest reading the book Girl Interrupted. That is from the perspective of somebody who's diagnosed with BPD. It shows BPD in a more humanized, realistic type of way.
Yes, but it's her experience in an institution with her fellow mentally ill patients.
So yeah, when it comes to Girl Interrupted, a friend of mine was telling me about it, and my friend insisted, for this reason, I believe, she insisted that I read the book first prior to watching the movie. The movie is an entertaining bit of cinema. I fucking love the movie. The movie's absolutely gorgeous.
It is.
Probably one of my favorite roles of Angelina Jolie. And Brittany Murphy, one of the most underrated actresses of all time. Rest in peace. But if you read the book is her memoir, so it works more like a diary. So you get more of a perception of her life, her thoughts, her perspective in the book of Girl Interrupted. The book is a much better representation than the movie is. The movie is very entertaining, glorious movie. But read the book, absolutely.
So what do we think of the yellow wallpaper and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Frankenstein and Psycho? They all have their thumbs in the mental awareness pie.
Yeah. I think they are movies that have to be taken with a respectful grain of salt. They do show a side, and in some cases, an accurate side. But mental health, and even if you look at any particular diagnosis individually, they are not a monolith. While certain ones, we were talking about BPD a second ago, while BPD is common and also uniform in a sense where people with BPD who encounter other people with BPD can relate a lot on life experiences. Life experience will change that. The trauma that triggers BPD will be different. The conditions, the living conditions that you have that shape your perspective while in BPD, the access to different things or indulgences will vary from person to person. So it's important to understand that schizoaffective, as it's in some of the movies we talk about, BPD, as it appears in some, DID, which I'm sure we're going to talk about more specifically later on. All of these, dissociative identity disorder, all of these manifest differently in different people. And so just because we see it represented one way or another in our media doesn't mean that that's how every single person with that diagnosis behaves or acts or thinks. So it's important that we have a general understanding of these conditions as just people. Like, you don't have to be a person with BPD or DID or any other group of letters, and you don't have to have that or have someone close to you that has that. Just learn about it, and then you will experience the world a little bit more clear, in my opinion. This is a good way of introducing certain concepts to the general public.
Horror once equated mental illness with moral decay and danger. So, at least in horror, right?
Yes.
But somewhere along the way, the horror stopped just showing insanity and it started showing pain. Films that turn mental illness into an emotional metaphor. We got The Babadook, which shows grief as a monster.
Yes.
We have Hereditary, which shows familial trauma. Saint Maud shows religious obsession and psychosis. And then Midsummer, which is grief, manipulation, and rebirth.
Midsummer, or Midsommar, depending on how you want to pronounce it, because of
Depending, yeah.
how persnickety you want to be, is quite possibly one of my favorites on that list of movies you listed. She is dealing with so much grief. So I won't cover the end, but if you haven't seen Midsummer, the main character is dealing with grief in her own right. Someone else was dealing with the trauma. Her sister was dealing with trauma and decided to, we're on YouTube, unalive herself and her parents by way of asphyxiation through carbon monoxide. And so now, having lost her sister and her parents, our main character is dealing with that grief. She has an asshole boyfriend and is clingy, and you start to see these traits of grief as she's trying to cope while also just dealing with life in general with a lack of support, genuine support. And then it goes downhill from there because horror.
Let's see. Film scholar or therapist commenting on symbolism and catharsis. Which horror story has ever felt too real for you?
Midsommar might be one of those because grief is apparent. Hereditary was pretty real also. Between the both of them, they're dealing with grief. And while Midsommar deals primarily with the grief of the loss of a family member, Hereditary deals with, while also dealing with that family grief, it also deals with where the main character is forced to deal with her trauma. She is forced to confront the traumatic events and the upbringing of her mother who just passed, and how that might be impacting her family now. And everyone's dealing with things a different way. And then there's further loss in the course of this movie, and it's just grief compounding on grief. And sometimes, you know how they say that, bad things happen in threes. Happened with my mom. She lost a cousin and then lost a best friend just months apart, lost another friend shortly thereafter. And like, it's grief on grief on grief. And this just happened in like the past year. So I've seen this movie previously. So that is a real thing that happens with people. They have to deal with grief. And then while not having had a chance to process that grief, another grief-stricken moment happens again. And then sometimes yet another happens again. And rent is still due. So you still got to go to work. You still got to feed yourself. You still got to, live life. And sometimes that just becomes the hardest struggle. So I think watching between those two movies, that becomes the most realistic and immediately impactful of the various movies that we could be talking about.
For me, shows like Marianne feels a little too real in that I have seen things like that in my dreams, and I suffer from dissociative identity disorder. They've lumped it back in with multiple personalities, but I don't think that's fair.
DID is very complicated.
It is. And the concept that there is another entity or personality that is mandating that you do things or terrible things will happen.
Yeah.
Right? So Marianne was that for me. You process grief by keeping busy. Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes I use it as distraction, and sometimes I use it as time to process.
And
But
some people
that's
use
pretty
it,
rare.
and sometimes it's instead of using that as a process to heal and actually confront the trauma, some people use it as a sense of escapism, in a sense where they are not allowing it to settle that
Mhm.
is that trauma has occurred, or a particular event has had traumatic effects. So
Mhm.
you can see that in a person where maybe they've lost someone recently, but they seem too normal. Um, they're not accepting it yet. It hasn't clicked. And sometimes to prevent that from happening, they'll stay busy. So when you have a really, really busy friend that won't calm down, it's probably best to keep a close eye on them, just in general.
Mhm.
Let this be a quick reminder to check on your friends, check on your friends, check on your family, particularly the strong one, the one that never seems to have a problem, the one that seems to always be smiling and moving forward, head up and ready to go. That person could be is a very positive person. If so, bring them my way because I need that in my life. Um, uh, but they're also potentially dealing with something. And sometimes they feel like because and I speak from my personal experience because I've always been that strong friend that feels like they're not allowed to have something go wrong or to share it because God forbid I share my problems because now I can't be there for the other people who might need me to help them with theirs. Um, so let this be a reminder to one, check on your friends and family, just always periodically. Most of my friends, some of the people in the comments here will periodically get a message from me just going, hey, checking in. It's all it takes. Like my good buddy Mark Gunn started a campaign where it's just like, hey, once a week, find your friends and just text, you good? 2 words, 2 seconds, just text, you good? And sometimes it's like, no, I'm not. Don't want to talk about it, but appreciate you asking. That's a valid response. So that'll be the reminder to check
Mhm.
on them, check on your strong friends. And if you feel like you're the strong friend, it's okay to not be. Take it from one strong friend to another. It's okay to not be. You can break. It's allowed. You're allowed to have that
You're
downtime.
you
Give your space. Give yourself space to have space. Give yourself space to not be okay. I don't know if she's just constantly looking up or if she is frozen, which is a hilarious frame for her to be frozen on. Um, until Sako comes back, I'll just keep on babbling about it. Because in the grand scheme of things, that's what we're ultimately discussing. We're discussing um, movies that show people not being okay and what that ultimately means. Um, and if we get anything out of this, we'll talk about some movies, we'll talk about some books, but the most important thing that any of us can share or convey is that you're okay. And if you're not okay, you can be. If you're not okay, you will be. There are always people who are going to be there to listen. I'll make myself available. If you want to find me on socials, at DL Hearn Writes, mostly anywhere. Yeah, shoot me a message. Like, hey man, I saw your podcast and I just want to say I'm dealing with a blah 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 blah. Can I just rant? Yeah, I'll read it. I'll respond. I'll answer back and I'll check in on you. I'll put that on my shoulders because it's important. I know how much it matters for me to have that in friends and sometimes total strangers. And I've been that for total strangers who were dealing with things and didn't have anyone else to turn to. And it was nice to know that I could be there for them in that moment. So benefits everyone.
Yeah, I feel you, Nick. Uh, that was another uh super real, holy crap, I'm seen sort of situation. My brain works the same way and catalogs information in the same way, so I feel seen. Yeah.
And that's another thing. I'm glad Nicole said that. Who again was on one of our episodes just a few weeks ago. So go back and listen to the episode with Nicole and check out her books. In fact, everyone in our comment section has some pretty dope books. You can go ahead and check out everybody who's there. Shout out to all you guys. There's something important about feeling seen in movies. And we talk about representation and all these different other facets. So very rarely, while we may talk about race and gender and orientations and things being seen, in mental conditions, those are also important to properly represent. Because again, sometimes we're in our own heads and we're the only ones in the entire world dealing with the thing. We're not. Chances are there is someone who thinks just like you, who feels just like you do, and it's important to normalize how unnormal normal is, I guess is a way of saying it. Sako is distracted.
I am. So the problematic tropes. The crazy killer stereotype that Jenny mentioned.
Which is a highlight of horror, which is it's good and bad. Okay, let me clean that up. As it was mentioned, to have the crazy person as the villain is where the shift from normality happens, because you don't want this to be a normal person does insert horrific bad thing here. So you have to have something that makes the person not normal, and it shifts into that the person was crazy, because we used to use crazy as a broad term for anything not normal. But I think as horror evolves and we start to talk about mental health more honestly, people are sharing their honest thoughts, their honest struggles, I think we get a better idea of, one, people with insert condition here aren't all bad, and two, there's nothing normal about normal. There's
no one is normal. Everyone is fighting something.
Exactly, which is exactly my point. Like, there's nothing normal about normal. Whatever you're seeing as normal, societally normal, is probably an act because they're hiding trauma. And I have talked to a lot of people who, back when I knew them in our teens and 20s, I thought they were normal. I'm learning that they were dealing with heavy trauma, and they were just good enough to put on a mask. Masking is a very interesting concept.
Topic. Yeah.
Because I think that's it's not just identity concealing. I think it's condition concealing, or these conditions as an identity are being concealed. We use the term masking all the time, where it's like smiling when you're depressed. That's masking, essentially. The most generic way of defining masking. And I think that's what happens when you are in some movies, and I can't recall one. The Strangers is a good one, I think. To hide yourself, the crazy version of yourself, or the Black Phone. That's a better example. To literally use a mask when in one mindset versus another. Just something to give the other personality an identity, a face. I think masking is something we could discuss further for like an entire episode in its own right.
In its own right, yeah. Pretending to be normal to make other people comfortable. Yeah. That's a pretty good way of summing it up.
Yeah.
Like how cats hide when they're in pain, so humans do too. Having a pain exposes a weakness, which makes us vulnerable. Yeah, maybe so.
I agree with all that.
So more problematic tropes. would be the asylum horror and institutional fear. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
Films like Split and Shutter Island blur the line between mental illness and evil.
Yeah, I was going to talk about Split when I said discussing
That
DID
that
later.
made me so mad.
Yeah, when I said we'll talk about DID later, I was specifically talking about Split. So did you have more on that list, or do you want to go ahead and talk about Split now?
No, let's talk about Split. Yeah.
So the gist of Split, if you haven't seen it, is there's a guy who suffers from
Elijah Wood. Yeah. Not Elijah Wood.
James
McAvoy?
I want to call McAvoy. I want to say Corduroy. I knew that wasn't right. James McAvoy. He has DID. He has dissociative identity disorder or multiple personalities. And all of them are working towards, he has like 24 personalities diagnosed and identified. And there's a 25th in there that's lurking, creeping up. And they're all in preparation of this 25th identity known as the Beast. He kidnaps young girls. I think he just kidnaps and kills them. Nothing extra. You always have to specify that nowadays with movies. They won't get too much. But it explores the idea that someone with DID is evil and bad. And that's one of the reasons why we have to be very careful with how we represent in our films, in our literature in general. And I think that's where the problematic, because there's very little redeeming characteristics in that. I think the identity of Kevin, like the primary identity, was about as normal as possible. There were a couple of other different personalities. They weren't like bad or good. They were just different. Not everyone was evil, but some of them were. And I think it's just important to remember that not everyone suffering with DID is a bad person or is going to hurt somebody. Like,
right.
There's no beast coming that's creeping up on walls and shit. And none of your personality is going to make you instantly, suddenly stronger to where you're a superhuman villain or anything like that. But it does fit into the Unbreakable, Split, Glass trilogy.
I suppose so.
Because
I could talk a whole episode about Split and how there are ways that highlighted what was wrong with me, and I just don't.
I had a coworker who had DID, and I love psychology. And when I learned this, he was very open. He appreciated me taking his diagnosis seriously. I remember when I started there, someone had like whispered, "Hey, he has multiple personalities." That's kind of how they approached it. And then I'm like, okay. And then I just kind of talked to him like a normal person, because that's what he was.
Which is how you should treat it. Yeah.
And as I got to know him, I would work with him literally daily. And I got to understand through him the nature of his condition. And I got to recognize my favorite part was when I started to recognize when the personalities would switch out. I think he mentioned there was like a chair in his mind where like the main personality was like sitting in this chair is how he kind of defined it. I think Split talks about the light, the one standing under the light, as a way of highlighting.
I have a car. Yeah.
So it's like, who's driving the car? That your analogy?
Who's driving the car? Yeah.
So there's usually an analogy of some sort. For him, it was the one sitting in the chair, and I could tell when someone switched chair, when the personalities switched out, and I could hear them. And I think the most fascinating question I ever asked them was, "Do you all have a different favorite flavor of ice cream?" Which I thought was
Yes.
the most fascinating thing, because they did. The personalities had different. Um, there was things, little tonal things that would change, words used, way things were pronounced, little nuancy things that you may not otherwise notice if you don't work with the person regularly or live with a person or deal with them, interacting with them regularly. But again, all that to say, he's a person, you know, regardless of what name he used or thoughts he was having in the moment. He's a person, and when you encounter people who are, who live with these conditions, they're still just people. Treat them as such. That's kind of like my highlight moment. I can't emphasize that enough. And there's nothing to be scared of or afraid of, no more than any other person. And I think that's the problem with Split, to a point. But what is her name? The girl that's starred in the movie.
Oh, I forget.
She was in that Soho movie, Queen's Gambit. Who's the star of Queen's Gambit?
Huh?
I know her. I know her name is like right there. Anya Taylor-Joy. Thank you very much. Anya Taylor-Joy. She, I think her character was a really good character as far as how she humanized him, despite him being, her captor and, the ultimate villain in this movie. She humanized him a lot, and I liked that character in that movie.
So, what makes asylum horror so intriguing to Nick is exactly what you're both saying. It shines a light on who the real inhuman people are. And that isn't necessarily true. And
I think I see where Nick is coming from, though.
I suppose so.
I think
it's like that doesn't exist, but there's this comparison between fear and misunderstanding that is the contrast is negligible when it comes to movies like that.
I think as I think and I might be wrong, but I think what Nicole's pointing out is that to have these different conditions is what should be considered normal. And by normal, we mean human. We have human emotions. We all deal with trauma, and trauma hits us and changes us in different ways. That in and of itself is human and should be considered the norm.
It's the people who cannot function as a member of society.
Right.
That people don't understand why they're not in society.
Right. So, but even when you look at asylum horror, if you look at asylum horror dated today or something like Shutter Island, that's going to be different than if you look at asylums from like 100 years ago, where you can have a woman committed because she talked back to you. It's not that she was bad or crazy or nothing. She just didn't want to put up with your bullshit anymore, Todd. And so, that's all it was. There's no actual Todd. I'm just making up names.
You're talking about hospitals that are
and
that are overly, because they don't do lobotomies and electroshock therapy anymore.
No, of course, but that's kind of the point. Like, to treat people, to lock somebody up because you talk slack and they talk smack back, that's inhuman. To lock people up just because you find them weird, that's inhuman. To not show compassion or understanding for people, to me, I believe that's inhuman. And I think that's kind of the point that Nikki was making, that it highlights that these conditions are human conditions, and the people who are treating them foully are the truly inhuman people.
They're also not called asylums anymore. All the asylums were closed. So I used that word to point to a time frame. Yeah.
Yeah.
But horror isn't just a mirror of our own fears. It can also help us survive them.
Yeah.
So, the idea of exposure therapy through storytelling, facing fear in a safe space. I think that's why how do I put this? That's why people read horror, is they can experience not necessarily mental health gone bad, but they can process their own traumas by reading a book that maybe has a trigger warning on it, and it allows them to explore these topics in a safe space.
Yeah, it's one thing to have to deal with the trauma of insert thing here, but when it happens to you in real life, you're stuck in it. You're dealing with it. You're living with that stress, that pressure, that pain, that being anger, that whatever. But when you
Mhm.
can close the book, when you can turn the movie off or walk out of the theater, and then life is just sunshine and rainbows, it's fine. It's fine. And that is kind of the beauty of those
A palate cleanser is usually needed. Yeah.
yeah, or sometimes like okay. And this is maybe not the same thing you're talking about. But I know that when I'm very paranoid, and when something happens or I'm afraid something's going to happen and it works out, I'm always thinking about how bad could that have gone, and I can either be stuck with it in my own head or I can write it down. I can give the characters their own names, their own backgrounds, their own stories, and they can live out what I fear, right? And that allows me to explore that fear, to work those thoughts out. And then I always know that it only exists on paper. It only exists on paper. I can put the pen down, I can close the book, whatever it is, and I'm safe. And I think this is, by putting these stories out there, we can encounter these things, we can see these things, we can deal with these traumatic events and these traumatizing scenarios, and then close the book and go back to our smiling and be happy, smiling, happy people holding hands, as the great prophet REM once said. And I think that is the best part of horror therapy, as I call it. You can see the most extreme things on TV and know that in the end, everybody who got knocked down gets back up again. It's never going to keep them down. I did that for you, Jason. I know you were thinking it. And I think that's kind of the best part. That's the best way of dealing with it all. Is we can see it, experience it, but we never have to touch it. And we know that people who just went through it can get up afterwards. Saint Maud, after everything in that finale, I won't spoil it because some people haven't seen it. But yeah, at the end, you just walk away. In the events of Midsummer, at the end, they all walked away. At the end of Hereditary, they all walked away. Babadook, they all walked away.
It is a situation where we commiserate with the bad guy, and that it allows us to explore our own moral standing.
Yeah, I don't think there's like when I watch a horror movie and cheer for the bad guy, I don't like hate people, but I think it's sometimes a reflection of what counts as the bad guy, who counts as the bad guy.
I always, in my books, I always make the bad guy very human. Even if they're not human, like, just, like, they have their wants and needs and their wants aren't necessarily destroy all humans or anything like that. Right? So
what is that? Oh, I wish I had thought. I never remember. I want to say it's called Falling Down, but I don't think that's the name of the movie. It's the movie where the dude just goes crazy. He's having a bad day, and shit just goes sideways for him, and he eventually just says "fuck it" and is going off. And he's basically just a guy who just stopped putting up with everybody else's bullshit. Does that make him the bad guy? He's kind of painted as the bad guy in the movie. Is he though? And the older I get, the more I relate to, I relate to that guy, because I was just explaining to other people the other day, people aren't being told off enough anymore. Some people like act real sideways and will come at you and say the ugliest things to your face with a smile, and they'll just expect you to take it. And I don't know why people believe that it's polite society to not confront people who are being complete asshats to you. No, people aren't being told off enough anymore. And while I don't mean to like incite people, let's be honest, some people do not treat others politely. They don't treat them humanly. And there's no reason why we should put up with that. The average person should not put up with someone being an asshole to them. And while that doesn't necessarily mean it has to express into violence, at least at some point it's like, hey, don't talk to me that way. I've walked off film sets because people talk to me sideways. I've walked out of projects because I'm like, you know what? You're not going to talk to me that way. And I walked straight the fuck off, grabbed my shit, and I left. Was that convenient for everybody? No. Did I make my fucking point? I sure the hell did. And in the grand scheme of things, you look at movies like, I think it's called Falling Down. I could be completely wrong about that. But that's what that guy is. Is he really the bad guy? No, but he's painted as a bad guy as far as being the antagonist or whatnot. And I think that's what's happening with a lot more of our horror. To bring it all back to the question that Nicole had, I think the difference now in some cases is that the bad guy isn't exactly bad. And we're starting to see that he's just the person that's no longer putting up with the bullshit of society or the family or whatnot. And we express it in an extreme way to fit the genre. Kind of to use the basketball analogy, and then I'll shut the fuck up about it. If you have two basketball teams, two good basketball teams, or insert sports teams here, whatever your favorite sport is, and they're both going to go to the court as if the other team is the bad guy. But what makes one team the bad guy versus the other is your fandom for, one or the other. Neither one is the actual bad guy, but they're both being treated as such. So I think what the ultimate answer to that is how do we define the bad guy? Because a lot of stories you can change perspectives, and the bad guy can easily be the good guy in somebody else's point of view. Joker.
I have many characters throughout my life that like Enzo Giovanni. In some stories he's the antagonist. In other stories he's the protagonist. So it all depends on context.
Yeah.
Where is he providing conflict and where is he resolving it?
Yeah, there's a really good point being made in the comments. Nicole's making it now. She's responding to Jace. When it comes to family, when you have something like a matriarch that's respected, or you have like family traditions, but you realize that they're problematic for one reason or another, whatever that reason might be, you don't have to go along with it. And I think when you decide to buck against that tradition, you get viewed as the bad guy because you're not going along with the way things have always been, regardless of how minor or severe those might be. But to you, of course, as you're realizing that the insert, tradition or trope is problematic, the people who are still doing it are the bad guy. Midsummer is a great example, about who's the actual bad guy in that movie, because when you're looking at the the village, this is normal for them. They're not bad guys. This is just what they do. It's just their way. They don't mean anything ill by it. They're not trying to destroy the world or even harm individual people. It's just their way. Who's the bad guy? The people who came in and disrespected their culture, the ones that wanted to benefit and profit in some case off of their society. Who's the bad guy? I mean, imagine if someone comes to your house and it's like, I'm gonna post up at your house real quick and I'm gonna just expose your family, then all your privacy to the rest of the world. Who's the bad guy? Even if you do some wild off the wall kind of shit, that's your way, that's your house. What's good, what's bad, it's perspective, it's subjective. And I think that nowadays we are looking at, I guess maybe as we've gotten older, we're relating more to the people who just said, enough is enough and it's time for a change. That's a Owen Hart line. I brought it back to wrestling. You're welcome. Yeah, let's not talk about Chris Hansen outside the house, because we know what happens when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you have a seat right here? Yeah, I think that's it. We're redefining the bad guy, and we're realizing that sometimes the bad guy is actually the hero. The story's being told from the bad guy's perspective. Therefore, the hero looks like the bad guy.
Indeed. So we had been talking about processing horror in a safe space and using it as a tool for emotional release. So, like, you can feel adrenaline, you can feel control over what is over your trauma, and catharsis, like the way you feel after you've read it.
Yeah, I would much rather, if someone was feeling really mad and wanted to hurt people, I would much rather them sit down for 2 hours and watch, Scream or The Purge or something like that, than to go outside their house and harm people. Because when the movie ends in 2 hours, nobody's harmed. No one's dead. Everyone's okay. They feel a little bit better. As opposed to just snapping and, next thing you know, now we have arrangements to make, whether it's a hospital trip or otherwise. Sometimes they just need to feel it happen, and you can feel it happen without actually doing it. And I think that horror, just like an action movie, you mentioned like just an adrenaline rush. Action movies do the same thing. Thrillers do the same thing. Sometimes that you can get a thrill out of watching like a superhero movie, like just a action-packed Marvel movie or whatever, or a dark Batman movie or whatever. Same kind of emotional release after watching those. I would much rather someone watch a movie than cause somebody harm.
Therapist or creator who uses horror in healing. I don't know. Let's see. Horror helped me name what I was afraid of.
I mentioned that a little bit earlier, I think, when you popped away.
So, tips for mindful viewing.
Okay.
We can talk about grounding techniques, be it through meditation or...
That's a reminder to give this video a like if you enjoyed this conversation. That's what Sako was doing. She was just telling you all to hit the thumbs up and give this video a like because you like us. And if you like us a lot, you can share this video with other people. Thumbs up.
Guided meditations or just meditating in general to ground yourself. And then journaling after...
Touch grass, as people say nowadays. Touch grass.
Touch grass. Journaling after intense films, and then rewatching comfort horror.
Scream is a great comfort horror.
At least for you. Yeah.
It is. It's a great comfort horror. I love watching Scream. One of the second or third Purge movies are pretty good for me too. I enjoy watching those. The second one, probably Anarchy, probably my favorite one. I can't watch the Forever Purge. It's too real right now. I tried watching that about a month ago. Couldn't. I'm like, ooh, this is. I don't know if this is a movie or CNN. I can't tell.
Yeah.
I had to literally turn it off. But no, I think it's a comfort horror. Might be the kind of horror that's horror without being horrific. Like The Frighteners, a review we recently done. So if you're not sure if that's a movie for you, you can watch our review on The Frighteners. See, I'm getting better at plugging things. Yeah, just watch something that's just low key, or maybe something has a different impact on you. Maybe a horror that you find funny. Maybe you're
Dale
a vampire.
Versus Tucker.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe Cabin in the Woods.
Cabin in the Woods, excellent.
Cabin in the Woods is hilarious.
Example.
Maybe if you feel like you need therapy, but you're feeling vampiric, you can watch Therapy for a Vampire, or just our review on it. I recommend. I recommend that, and we're having a rebuttal episode. Yeah, we are. That's why I keep running the I can't wait. I haven't got the date
nailed
locked in just yet, but just wait. We're gonna apparently the Dan and Dan's wife Susan, they had things to say about our opinions of that movie, so they're gonna come back and rebuttal. It's gonna be I cannot wait for that episode.
It's gonna.
I've never had somebody hit me up and it's like, hey, that review you just did. I'm like, oh, you want to talk about it? They're like, yeah, have us on the show. I'm like, got it. But in the gist of what we're saying is some horror is fun. And if you can watch a horror that's not horrific for you, then maybe when you're having a bad day and you want to watch the world burn, maybe put down the gas can and just watch a movie where the world burns. Or like I was talking about earlier, write it. She was talking about journaling. This could be the reason why you express your creativity. Write down how bad you want the world to burn. Turn that into a short story. Turn that into a short film. Turn that into whatever media. Turn that into song lyrics if you want to. Write a song about it. There's lots of ways to express your pain through art. Draw that maddening picture. Whatever it is, there's a lot of ways to utilize art to get that pain out. But just don't harm yourself and don't harm others. Please don't harm yourself.
I kind of want to talk a little bit about the final girl archetype and how it's empowering, especially for us women, to have the heroine be sorry, hold on.
No, I saw it. I'm sure Jace caught the look. Yeah. Me and him talked about okay, exactly what I don't need is one more story idea.
Yeah. And
one more project.
Final Girl the movie is a good
That's the one with the blonde. That's the one with the blonde. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So be mindful. There's a movie called Final Girl and a movie called Final Girls. There's one that's plural, one that's not. We're talking about the one that's not plural. It's got the cover is usually a blonde girl in the center. So that's the one she's referring to. Yeah, also, good. It is a good movie. It's a very
It is a good movie. It is basically about a pack of misogynist dudes who like to hunt women. Like, let them loose in the woods and hunt them with guns. And one of the girls actually gives them a run for their money, and she's the one who gets to walk away from that altercation.
Yeah.
So
Another good one is You're Next.
You're Next.
You're Next is probably grossly underappreciated.
Hush is a good one.
We've already done. It's a shame
we've already done Hush
but it is a fantastic movie. It's one of my favorites. It's on
for
DVD.
Final Girl sort of energy.
Yeah, if there's a movie, if there's a DVD I can convince you to buy right now, buy DVD for Hush. It's a masterpiece. It truly is.
My cats are storming into my room.
It's cool. I'm waiting for my daughter to storm in here anytime soon.
Yeah, we're wrapping up. We are.
But no, there's a lot of good. The downside to the trope, though, I'll ask you this question real quick. Do you think that after going through all of those events, movies without sequels, like Hush or Final Girl, do you think that they represent the trauma that follows such events?
Not usually. There aren't usually sequels.
Right. There's a book.
Scream is a great example of.
I was going to talk about Scream in a second. Yeah, because you get to see Sidney Prescott as she's dealing with the trauma of the movie previous, and how that does impact her both in her unjustified, but then eventually justified readiness. Particular what you get to Scream 3. But there's also a book by Riley Sager. My friend Kat would be angry for me bringing him up. His books are hit or miss for me sometimes. But Final Girls talks about a girl who's gone through a traumatic situation and then has to deal with the aftermath therein, both being her face on the news because of the coverage of said event, versus just kind of dealing with life after having dealt with such events. The plot thickens after that, but that starts to give away things. So, but that's an interesting book to throw a book recommendation at the end of an episode. Final Girls, The Final Girl, I think that's what it's called, by Riley Sager. You'll know which one. It's that one. Do we have a movie recommendation for this?
Not yet.
All right. Well, I know you got a list of things you're going down. Maybe one will pop up here.
Well, I am ready to start recapping and closing out. So if we want to discuss the possibility of a movie to do things.
You got about like 60 seconds in the chat if you want to suggest a movie. But I would probably go, since we've already done Hush, because we just mentioned it. I think for the topic, we've mentioned Hereditary and we've mentioned Midsummer.
I still haven't seen either of those movies.
Ooh, I've seen both, and I loved Midsummer. So I would.
So let's do Midsummer. Do we know who is streaming Midsummer?
If you give me a moment, I'll find out.
I think I can find it on Shudder.
I mean, it's somewhere.
Oh, it's HBO Max. Okay.
Can you watch that on Max?
Mm-hmm.
I see Max, and I think I see Netflix also.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure about the Netflix. I'd have to open Netflix and check.
I don't see Netflix on the list, but you can rent it on Apple TV. You can, I think you can rent it on Hulu.
It is not available on Netflix, but I believe it is on HBO Max.
It is on HBO Max, which I have an account. So we can rock that out. So tune in on Tuesday next week. Excuse my cats.
And my printer for some weird reason.
So in this episode of Sako and the Moon, we explored how horror mirrors the mind, where fear meets trauma, grief, and survival. The Babadook to Midsummer, we looked at how horror sometimes stigmatizes mental illness, but also how it can heal. Horror lets us face what scares us in a safe space, turning fear into understanding. Because the monsters in these stories aren't always villains, they're reflections of what it means to be human.
Indeed.
So maybe horror doesn't break us, it helps us rebuild.
I think it's just a matter of how we and this is, I don't know what my printer is doing.
We can't hear it.
Oh, I can. It's loud. It is going nuts. But I think the thing about horror is kind of like the word suffering. It's subjective. What is horrific for some is everyday to others. If you lived a life of comfort, I won't say privilege, but a life of comfort, then the smallest thing can be horrific to you. Otherwise, sometimes you live these dark, painful lives, and that's normal. Still horrific, but you've normalized it. So I think a lot of what qualifies as horror, particularly as it impacts a person and their mental state, is subjective. So I think one of the greatest takeaways we can have in this episode is to be kind to each other and be kind to yourself. Everyone's going through something that is normal. And if we approach each other with some compassion, it'll be a lot easier to get through things. I think that's probably our greatest takeaway we can have at the end of this episode.
So I have a question for the audience.
That's you guys out there.
As I like to do, I want to hear from you guys. What horror story helped you face something real? Drop your thoughts in the comments or tag me on social media. Let's talk about how horror can heal.
Let's do that.
Next week, Halloween falls on a Friday this year.
Okay,
so in our Halloween episode, we will explore horror as it pertains to other genres.
Ta-da!
Be it horror in other genres or other genres in horror for that matter. So if you love exploring the dark side of storytelling, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Yeah, so you don't miss the next deep dive into horror and publishing and all the cool stuff we do.
Yeah, we do this stuff too.
This has been Sako and the Moon. Until next time, keep your light close and your monsters closer. Oh my God! Scroll.
Bouncing our heads back and forth until the show ends.
Oh, sorry.